environmental educators in Staten Island at the Staten Island Greenbelt.
Right now we are on the Blue Trail mixed with the Nature Center Trail, so we're right by the Nature Center right down the road here. And I'm going to be talking about geology, and specifically the geology of Staten Island, from where we came from, where we are now, and where we're going to be ending up in the future. Geology can tell you all about what our land used to be and maybe predict what it can be in the future. So to start out with that, I'm going to point you over to this giant rock here. So this is a special rock because this is called the glacial erratic. So thousands and thousands of years ago, we had something called the Ice Age. And the specific ice block I'm going to talk about is the Wisconsin ice sheet. So this formed about 50,000 years ago in Canada. And as time went by, it started to move down south. And as it moved down south, it had such a force and it was so big, it was about a mile high, that it picked up all the earth under it and it started to push it down south. So over about the period of 50,000 years, it started to move rocks just as big as this, even bigger, and it started to move it down south. So about 10,000 years ago, when the ice was just about melting to its fullest, this rock here was brought along with it, and when the ice melted, this is where it is finally rusting. And there's a few pieces of evidence that can tell that it's part of the glacial erratic. If you look closely, you can find some grooves. Along the way, other rocks might have rubbed up against it, and you can kind of see some grooves along the edges that show over a long period of time that it got eroded by these other rocks. So erosion is important. So erosion means in geology that it is being broken down by weather, ice, other rocks, other animal activities. And speaking of ice, if you see cracks in the rocks that we see on the top here, that means that rainwater has got into the rock, and then when the water is inside the rock, the ice that forms in the cold makes the rock expand just a little bit. Remember, geology takes a long time to form, and eventually the ice is going to expand so much that the rock is going to crack and eventually break. It's pretty cool stuff. This has been here for a long time, so we're seeing a very long period of history. So we're going to take a little hike along the Nature Center Trail, and we're going to be seeing what we can find about Staten Island and its geology. So as we're walking, I want to ask you guys, what do you think geology is? Most people might say it's about rocks, and you're not really technically wrong. That's not the only thing about geology. So geology involves the study of the earth, what the earth is made of, where it was before, like I said, and where it is now, and where we're going to be in the future. So so it's not just rocks. We also have tectonic plates that plates below the ocean that push up against each other and make mountains. And we also have tectonic plates that move away, that separate continents, and we'll talk about that later. But we're going to be focusing just on Staten Island and where it came from. So before I get to that, I want to talk about three specific rocks in the rock family. So there are three types of rocks. So the first one is metamorphic, where rocks are underground and they get heated by the inner crust of the earth, and it has a lot of pressure, and those rocks start to melt, and then it forms up when it cools down. That's called metamorphic. The second type of rock is the sedimentary rock. So those rocks are almost like metamorphic, just without the heat. So they're underneath the earth, really far down, and they get really pressurized, and all the rocks around it start to really get stuck together, like they start to press up against each other and form a whole new rock. That's called sedimentary. And the last form of rock we're going to talk about is igneous. Igneous in Latin means fire. So you need magma to have igneous rocks. So a fun fact, Hawaii is an island, or a bunch of islands that is made from magma. So in the middle of the ocean, you had underwater volcanoes that over time would spew magma, they would cool, more magma would come up and they'd cool, and then that would form the islands of Hawaii. So that's pretty cool stuff, I think. So we're going to be taking our walk, and we're going to be seeing what kind of rocks or rock formations we might be able to find. Is there anything you want to add, Nancy?
A little bit down the road here.
Let's just enjoy the sounds of nature as we walk.
Okay, 48 degrees.
It's so hot out right now. Yeah. We're not going to get many days in December just like this one. So once again, we are on the nature trail right near the nature center, and we are on our geology hike. We're going to be finding things in the ground that pertain to Staten Island's history, and we're going to be analyzing that and explaining how Staten Island came to be and where it came from, where we're going. So Staten Island has a very diverse geological area, and it's not like the other 5 boroughs, and I'll explain that in a little bit, just so keep watching. We have all types of rocks here. We have, like I said, sedimentary, we have metamorphic, and even igneous rocks, and glacial erratics. So we are very rich in our geology here, and we've actually found some rocks here that are very rare in the world. So not just in America, in the world. So as we go on, we'll let you know all about that. But we're going to be following Nancy, and I think Nancy found something. So let's just follow along and see what she sees. Okay, Nancy, so what have you found?
I think that has to do with the past.
All right.
I think you have something to start out with in your pocket.
Okay, so rocks can be, what do you think you can use rocks for? What tools do you think you can make with rocks? I don't know. Humans, as long as they've been around, have been using rocks to their advantage, dating back to thousands of years ago. But specifically here in the Greenbelt, we had the Lenape creating what we have arrowheads here. So they would find specific rocks and they would carve them, and they would use them on their spears or arrows, and that would get them to, that would be useful for them in hunting. So rocks can be useful in hunting as well. If you look a little bit in the distance here, you might find a row of gigantic rocks here. Now those rocks are here on purpose. About 100, 150 years ago, the Greenbelt was made up of farms, and all different kinds of farms. So how would people know where the borders were? Well, these rocks were also brought down here with the glacial erratic. So the farmers here would use that to their advantage. They would use horse carriages. They'd bring all these big rocks and have these lines for their farms, and that's how people would know where their land begins and ends. So these rocks have been here for not too long, actually. You're going to find more of these fences along in most of the Greenbelt, but just so if you ever come across them, you know what they're here for. They're actually here for a purpose to separate farms. And bringing it into modern day, what I have in my pocket, I have, well, we have, so pencils. So pencils are modern day geology. So when you look at a pencil, you see the tip of the pencil. That's actually graphite and clay, things you get in the ground. You mix together and you put into the pencil. The eraser part is made of synthetic rubbers, all of which come from the ground. What's that little piece underneath the eraser? That's called aluminum. It's a metal. It comes from the ground. And if you look at the wood, there's not much geology to that, right? It's just trees. But how do you make that pencil? You use machines and oils from the ground to transport them to the factories and use the machines to carve them out into the pencils themselves. So everything around us involves geology. Buildings, clothing, you name it. Everything involves geology. That's how we got into our current day situation. So speaking of construction, we don't have much of it on Staten Island, but throughout history, humans have used limestone in construction. And limestone is interesting because it's been used forever. Forever, in fact, I mean, the Egyptians used it in ancient Egypt to build the pyramids. So those are made of limestone. What else is made of limestone? It's a pretty big building, I think. I think it's called the Empire State Building. That's actually there's also limestone in that as well. And there's also old ancient buildings in Europe that you'll find limestone in. So geology, limestone is a very useful rock that you can find and do construction with. Speaking of construction as well, we used to have a quarry here on Staten Island in Graniteville, which is actually interesting. That's where the name Graniteville got its name from. When they did the quarry, they thought that they were actually mining granite, and that was around maybe like 80, 90 years ago. And that would be used in construction in buildings in New York, people's houses, you name it. And it's actually funny because years ago we found out that they weren't actually mining granite. They're actually mining something called diabase. So it's actually a little bit harder than granite, but it can still be used in construction. And it's just funny that Graniteville is named for something that wasn't really there. So I guess it should be called Diabaseville? I'm not sure.
Doesn't have much of a ring to it.
No, it doesn't really. Really take it for granite. All right, Nancy, is there something you say?
Well, yeah, this is a pathway, the white trail that goes to the Heyerdahl Foundation.
Yes, exactly.
So can you tell us what they did and how really it affected their farm?
Sure, Nancy.
Soil?
Thank you for bringing it up. So Heyerdahl Hill is actually an old orchard that was here about 150 years ago, and Heyerdahl was a man who thought he was going to have a winery here. It was going to be very successful. That'd be great if we had a winery on the Greenbelt, but unfortunately, because of the geology of Staten Island, that couldn't happen. Some rocks really affect the soil and affect the pH of it. It makes the soil really basic. So that means that you can't really grow a lot of grapevines like you wanted to. And now we know all about that, but back then you just kind of had to guess sometimes. And unfortunately for him, the orchard failed, and now we have the ruins of his house, which are also made of rocks. They're here on the Greenbelt, so you can see his foundation.
And speaking of houses, look at that. This is somebody's house, an actual house here. There might be a little field mouse.
Mm-hmm. Woodpeckers.
Inside, yeah, the woodpeckers pecked it, looking for insects. And speaking of trees and plants, because they're so influenced by the pH, this is one of my favorites. The shiny bark here. It is shiny. We call these lenticels. The tree is actually breathing carbon dioxide, oxygen out. And this is a black birch tree. And boy, I'll tell you, when it starts making the sap again in the spring, if you just take a little bit of the twig and you scratch it and you smell it, it's just like root beer. Everybody likes that.
I love it. Yeah. Who doesn't?
We're almost there.
So once again, we are on the nature trail, and we're looking at the geology of Staten Island. And speaking of the geology of Staten Island, remember I talked before about erosion. Erosion's can be formed by weather, water, but it can also be formed by human activity. So if you see on the trail here, this is a very busy trail, and over time, footpaths and even bicyclists, you're not allowed to bike here, but sometimes they do, and they actually damage the path here. So as you see here, there's a big slope here, and it's supposed to be nice and flat and even, but over time, we're eroding the surface, and we're showing, you can see tree roots here that's not supposed to be, more rocks, and even some bedrock, which is supposed to be underneath all the soil. So as this erodes and it rains even more, that rain is just going to run down the path here and cause it to erode even more. So we're trying to fight back against that with our stewardship program, trying to kind of rebuild or help maintain the Greenbelt in a way. So if you can do your part and help and make sure that people don't ride their bikes and make sure this is only a walking only zone, that'd be really great help. We need all the help we can get. We have 2,800 acres of the greenbelt to preserve, and yeah, it's very important to keep this place in one piece. Yeah.
Wow. You know, some people like to collect rocks as a hobby, and you call those people rock hounds. That's a nice little hobby to start, right?
Yeah.
Because rocks are so pretty. They're all different shapes and sizes and colors. And I think wow, what's coming out of the ground here? Let's see. Oh, what's this one?
So what we have here is actually a piece of quartz.
Pretty.
It's a mineral. So the difference in a mineral is that minerals actually make up rocks. So rocks are a mixture of different minerals. Quartz is a mineral, so it's not a rock, but it can be one day if it forms up with other rocks beneath the ground. And it can have crystal. If you're really lucky, you'll find a clear one, and it'll have lots of crystals in it, and it's really pretty. This is one of the most common minerals that you'll find anywhere. Anywhere that you find dirt, you can find quartz. And what we also have here is a red stone called sandstone. So this is a sedimentary rock, and you can tell because if you use your fingernail and kind of rub on the rock, it's kind of sandy coming off. There's a lot of particles coming off, and this is really interesting because
maybe we can. See?
Yep.
Wow,
see how
look at
easy
that.
it is to scratch it?
So it's a very soft.
It's very soft.
And that's a way of it when you get identifying rocks by their hardness. If you're starting to study rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the study of rocks? Geology.
Exactly what we're doing.
There's also another cool name. Lapidary is someone who works with really rare stones and minerals. So lapidary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know that.
one more cool thing about the sandstone, you can also use it to draw with. So you can go into the rock,
Ooh.
and you see the red on it. So if I can write my name, if I was trying to, but yeah, you can use the sandstone, and you see how it comes. All the particles come off really easy. So another fun fact about sandstone.
Yeah. And rocks are fun.
They really are. Like people don't realize the benefits of geology. I know it's not the most popular subject, but really, if you get into it, everything that in the world involves geology. And they have their uses. Definitely, diamonds come from the ground. That's geology. Basically, to make a diamond, what you need is time and pressure. Like all rocks, but diamonds take a really, really long time. Once you engage your significant other, or it's a Christmas gift, you're giving someone a piece of geology. So don't just think it's just rocks or mountains or anything like that. Anything that we mine for, maybe oil or different kinds of diamonds, it's all the same thing. Like I said, geology is the study of the earth and what it's made of. So right now we're kind of looking at the guts of the earth, and actually down the path we're going to show you a really, really neat thing about Staten Island and what makes the backbone, what really we're made of in Staten Island. And it's a really cool rock because you can't find it anywhere else in the world except for Africa. So remember I was talking about tectonic plates? Well, we're going to get back to that. Right now, do you have anything to say, Nancy?
Something about, I heard there's a quarry on Staten Island, and it's on Forest Avenue. Isn't it a city park?
Mm-hmm. I was just talking that before with Jessica about the Graniteville and where it got its name from. Is there anything else you wanted to add? I talked about.
No, we talked about that. In fact, all right.
Yeah, that's okay. As we make our way down the hill, we're going to find a little more erosion from our hikers, but that's okay because we're this is a learning opportunity. So like I said, this rock that we have that is very rare on Staten Island is actually a rock that you can only find in Africa. So when I was talking about tectonic plates before, tectonic plates can push together to form mountains, or they can go away from each other, making continents kind of split and go away from each other. So scientists have found out that Staten Island was once a part of Africa, and we have split over here in North America. And a way that they can find it is the specific rock that I'm going to point out, called serpentinite. So I know there's a lot of leaves on the ground right now, and it's really hard to find the rocks, but I know exactly where we can find our own little spot of serpentinite.
Yeah, let me hear a little chipmunk chipping. I don't know if you can hear that in the background.
You think the food maybe?
There's definitely some food out there. Someone might find this tasty too.
Oh, it's a nice photo.
Almost there.
Yes, we're almost there. Oh, there it is.
All right, finally. So if you look on the ground here, you might see this greenish kind of looking rock right here. And it feels kind of different than other rocks. Kind of feels a little weird. This is called serpentinite. This is the bedrock that makes a portion of Staten Island. And it's actually a reason why we have the elevation we have. Toad Hill has a lot of serpentinite. And it goes up to 400 feet above sea level. And that makes us one of the highest points south of Maine on the eastern seaboard. But serpentinite is cool because this is the rock that you'll find in Africa. And this is, like I said, what makes a good majority of our bedrock here. So because of the erosion, we can see this. And like I said, it has a greenish kind of glow. It kind of looks unique, doesn't it? And serpentinite is actually a rock mixed with serpentine and olivine. So remember, like I said, minerals come together to form these rocks. And I don't have one on me, but I've seen people use serpentinite to make kind of little ornaments or little decorations, polish it up, make it look really nice. It'd be a good gift to somebody, just like diamonds or any other thing that you can, any other gift that you can find. So, is there anything else you wanted to add, Nancy?
No, just don't come and take our serpentinite.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to take anything. And anyhow, I had a really good walk today.
Yeah. We're about to end our day, our hike. So that is our geology of Staten Island. Oh, I forgot one more thing. Remember when I said tectonic plates move away from each other? About 400 million years ago, we once had a big supercontinent with all the continents put together, and that was called Pangaea. So that's why if you look at a map of the world, you'll see all the different continents, and if you look close enough, you might see that they all look like puzzle pieces that can form together and fit into one piece. Well, scientists have theorized that, yes, they can be put together, and that is what Pangaea is. So 400 million years ago, that was once together, and long time it took for them to split up. And we're still doing that. We're still moving away from each other, eventually going to meet on the other side. So really cool stuff here, things that we know because of geology. And I really appreciate it even more now from studying it at my time at the Nature Center. How about you, Nancy? Right?
Yeah, our local history is great. So come back and join us another time. And remember, the park is open for your enjoyment.
All right, guys, thank you for joining our Facebook Live of Geology, and we hope to see you again. Once again, my name is Chris Rommel, environmental educator.
I'm Nancy the writer, signing off.